This meeting is called to order. We're going to begin with a moment of silence and the pledge led by Ms. Satterfield.
Let's take a moment of silence. The pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. It's always good to see a good crowd here. Looking for elected officials in the audience. I do not see any. If you're out there, please raise your hand. There's Stephanie. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie Welch, our city councilman, and also our mighty partner with the Great Schools Partnership. We're glad to have you here, Stephanie, all the time, all the time. I think, didn't I also see Dr. Wise out there? Okay. Welcome, welcome. And also, I'd like to give Pellissippi a plug. Dr. Wise, you were kind enough to leave the invitations about your big reveal. Where are you? Thank you. The big reveal, let me just put it out there for anyone who might be listening. It says it's going to be the largest expansion in 44 years, event too big for one campus. Wow. 10:15 to noon at Hardin Valley campus and 10:45 to noon at Blount County. Hardin Valley is, they're both on the same day, Dr. Wise, February 1st. So please, please, I'm sure you could go on their website and get all the details and information, but they're wonderful partners, and we sure appreciate our community colleges in this area. All right, board members, a couple of announcements. I've had some questions about the strategic plan. We will be discussing that at our workshop January 30th, and we're very hopeful by then that we can make some real concrete decisions. So just that's a FYI. Also, you're going to be receiving an agenda packet in the near future, but just a reminder, our policy review meeting is going to be next Wednesday, the 23rd at 1 o'clock. That was the one that was canceled in December because there were so many prior commitments. Let's see, one other thing I'd like to point out. I was at Northwest Middle School this morning for their ribbon cutting. We approved a grant a couple months ago from Planet Fitness. Go ahead. From Planet Fitness on opening a workout center that's connected to the school. Very exciting, and you can see that our wonderful superintendent really got into it, exercising with us, and also that's Bill Baldwin, the principal of Northwest Middle School, next to him. But we had a lot of fun, and I want you to know that we reminded Mr. Thomas that it is a judgment-free zone. So we had a good time with that, and appreciate very much anytime our community sponsors pitch in and let good things like this happen with our schools. All right, moving on. Changes to the agenda. I think, board members, that you received an email from Ms. Coatney about the following agenda changes or updates. There was a correction to the fiscal note on item 5D4. The field trip date listed in 7C was corrected, a date correction on that. And you also received 2 draft versions of legislative priorities via email. You've got paper copies at your desk, and that's something that we'll be discussing momentarily. And then also, item 9 has been deferred. So having said that, are there any other requests for changes? Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In light of all the discussion that we had last week regarding the career magnet and all the speakers that we listened to, and I know we have a number of people here tonight, I would like to, if there's no objection, to move that from the last item on the agenda to, I believe it would be 8A. Is that right, Ms. Coatney?
Yes, Mr. McMillan, that would put it at the top of the regular agenda items.
Right. That's what I would like to do if there's no objection to that.
All righty. Just formality, do I hear a motion to accept that change? So moved. And a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We will do it, Mr. McMillan. Thank you. All right. Ms. Coatney?
Item 5, consent agenda.
Do I hear a motion to approve? Approved by Horn, second by Norman. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6A, approve second reading of Knox County Board of Education Policy A140, school day as amended.
All in favor? I'm sorry. I'll get in a roll here in a minute. Thank you, Ms. Horn, and second by Norman. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7A, approve State of Tennessee Department of Education Read to Be Ready Summer Program Grants for Green Magnet Academy, Lonsdale Elementary School, Sarah Moore Green Magnet Academy, and South Knoxville Elementary School in the total amount of $168,000.
Motion by Satterfield, second by Norman. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7B, approve Farmers Insurance Grant in the amount of $2,500 for Beaumont Magnet Academy designated for activities and materials to support first grade learning centers.
Motion by Satterfield, second by Owen. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7C, approve Target Field Trip Grant in the amount of $700 for Dogwood Elementary School designated to expenses related to a field trip to the Knoxville Civic Auditorium for a production of Aesop's Fables on February 15, 2019.
Motion, I'm sorry. Motion by Christie, second by Horn. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8A will be discussion and action regarding the continuation of Career Magnet Academy.
Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a lot of discussion, but we did not have a motion in reference to this. And I've worked with the law director in the last few days to come up with a motion that I wish to offer to see if it's acceptable to this body. And at this time, I'm going to refer to Mr. Dupler and have him read the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Dupler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McMillan, as Mr. McMillan said, I worked on this with him, and this was his request, and I was happy to do so. I also worked with Mr. Thomas and his leadership staff to come up with the correct figures. But the motion that Mr. McMillan is proposing is as follows. Approve programmatic changes as implemented in school year 2018-19 for Career Magnet Academy, CMA, and reallocate the current magnet budget of CMA to provide marketing material, increased recruitment, and a modest sign for the campus, and a total amount not to exceed $5,000. Additionally, upper administration is to report to the board on CMA's recruitment and marketing progress at the March and May 2019 board work session meetings.
All right,
Good.
motion has been read.
Thank you, Mr. Duper. I wish to offer that in the form of a motion, if I can get a second to it.
Do I hear a second? I'll second. Thank you. Motion by McMillan, second by Christie. Do we have discussion? Please, we do. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, we have 3 people signed up for public forum regarding this issue. The first one is Evan Heatherly. Mr. Heatherly, if you can state your name and your county of residence, please.
My name is Evan Heatherly. I'm a resident of District 2. So first off, I'd like to say thank you to Madam Chair and the board members for giving me the chance to address the board today. I'm 17 years old and I'm a junior at Career Magnet Academy. I also serve on our school's Student Government Executive Board, and in that role, I do my best to advocate for what my fellow scholars desire, and I feel it's my obligation to share with the board the reasons that our school should remain open. I'd like to start with an account of my time at CMA. The opportunities there are amazing for students. We were afforded the chance to take the ACT 1 year early and then take college classes with college professors as a sophomore or junior. I know personally that I would never be able to do this if I did not have the financial support from the county. I would have to receive scholarships to be able to afford even community college tuition. So this is the reality of many students here today. Not everyone at CMA is affluent, but nobody is denied the opportunity to take college classes due to financial status. Additionally, I would like to address a claim from one of the board members during last week's meeting. They mentioned that our school was considered a financial extra. True that may be, but we are vital to this county, as many high schools in the district are either at or near full capacity. If our school closed down, it would create quite a strain on the facilities already in place. Therefore, either our school needs to remain open, or the board must face the fact that the existing schools will need expansions and upgrades. So what does that really say to the other magnet programs in the budget? Why does the board choose to fund those as well? It's because you all want to give us, as students, a variety of choices for our education. I assure you, CMA is not just an extra. It is a vital choice for students who want to obtain early college credits and who cannot afford them. We need this school. You need this school. We will be the next doctors and lawyers and teachers. So I ask you, do you want a mediocre class of students or an exceptional one? One of the other opportunities I've been fortunate enough to have at CMA is to be the president of the French Club. I started this club during my freshman year with a desire to share my love of French language and culture with the school. And this is all done on my own time because we do not have French as an academic class. Now the French Club has become a fixture of our school, and the students in the club learn about the basics of French and are able to use them in our daily lives. Cette école m'a donné beaucoup d'opportunités. This school has given me so many different opportunities. And as mentioned last week, another opportunity I've been granted is the chance to do student teaching in Miss Janet Acosta's Spanish 1 class. Working with the 9th grade students has given me valuable experience I would never be able to get in a regular high school setting, as I'm working to become a foreign languages teacher. This is the type of opportunity I would normally have to wait until my junior year of college to be afforded. I've spent time planning lessons, teaching the lessons, grading papers, all of it. Seeing the growth of these students and their drive to learn has definitely had a positive impact on me, and I will advocate on behalf of their class as well, not just my own. Los estudiantes de esta escuela necesitan su voto. The students of this school need your vote. That's why I disagree with this sunset option. The freshman class has not even had a chance to take the ACT yet, and we want to deny them the opportunity to earn college credits? That's unacceptable in my opinion. Now, before you vote, please take a minute to understand our teachers and staff. Every single staff member at CMA wants to see all of us succeed. Every single one. They all make an effort every day to foster a productive and safe academic environment for us. We often talk about issues in our personal lives with our teachers because they care about us. They genuinely care about our success, both in and out of the classroom. Case in point, our college seminar classroom. Ms. Hahn advocated for a space for our dual enrollment juniors and seniors to complete work and be able to succeed in their classes. Our Dean of Students, Mr. Mosley, stays on top of us and encourages us to get our work done. And we all try to help each other and make sure that we understand the assignments that are given to us. Now see, that is what's special about Career Magnet Academy. We're all one big family. The students, parents, and staff at CMA deeply care about our school, and we want to see ourselves succeed. So in conclusion, I charge the board to extend these same opportunities that I have had to other students by voting to keep our school open and funded. Thank you.
The next speaker is Thomas Hoskins. Please state your name and county of residence.
Dear ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Wesley Hoskins and I live in District 7. I decided to start a petition about a week ago that would allow the school board to hear the public opinion on this matter. This petition has over 1,000 signatures. It includes many comments. Here are a few of the comments. It's a great school for this area. Other areas usually get all the opportunities, which I agree with. This is beneficial for the area. Keep the school. It's from a parent of the students that go to our school. I'm signing because I graduated from CMA last spring. As a current UTK freshman, I began academically as a sophomore. CMA is worth the funding. Savannah Allen. I work at PSCC, Pellissippi Community College, Strawberry Plains with these students. It is a great opportunity that should not be lost. Heather White, Pellissippi Counselor. These are just a few examples of the public opinion. Shutting down CMA will take this opportunity from everyone who has worked hard to get here. Please consider the people and not just the money. We are students and we should not be identified by a number or dollar signs. Over 1,000 people have come together to save CMA. Join with us and help make CMA a great opportunity for all Knox County students. Thank you.
Emily Elgin.
Hello, board members. My name is Emily Elgin, and I'm a resident of Voting District 2. I am a senior at CMA, and I have been a member of the student ambassadors and student government at my school for all 4 years. During these 4 years, I have seen myself, as well as other students and the staff, grow as we have adapted to and overcome all challenges that have been thrown at us. From changes in administration to funding scares to holding our very first graduation last year, CMA has faced every single one of these seemingly daunting situations with grace and strength. It is said that adversity reveals character. CMA has had its share of adversity, and through it has proved itself to be powerful and resilient. Before I came to CMA, I was extremely shy and reserved. I was terrified of presenting in class. I was anxious to talk one-on-one with my teachers, and even the idea of talking to the principal or any member of the office made me fearful. If I told my middle school self that in only a few years I would be confident enough to speak in front of a crowd of people on a public forum, I wouldn't have believed it. When I started high school at CMA, I was immediately met with constant encouragement from all around me. Although it was still daunting, I felt much more comfortable speaking in class. The staff didn't make me feel like just some student, but like their equal. And because of this, I knew I'd be able to come to any of them for any help I needed. Many teachers encouraged public speaking in their classes. This was something I was uncomfortable with, and many of my teachers knew that. But they didn't just tell me to get over it or pretend like this problem didn't exist for me. Instead, they acknowledged me and helped me every step of the way to find and build my own confidence. My story isn't uncommon for a CMA scholar. The environment of constant encouragement, care, and attention is the reason that so many scholars have been able to make such a positive change, and is one of the reasons that CMA is so unique. We urge you to make the decision to keep CMA open and to make that decision tonight. You want us to get our enrollment numbers up, but it's difficult to do that if the parents of future scholars are fearful about the fate of the school they are enrolling their children in. Deadlines are approaching fast. The window for students to transfer to CMA closes February 16th, only 1 month from now. And next Thursday, January 24th, will be our first open house of 2019. We're hoping to see many families attend, and I'm hoping those families don't have to be afraid to transfer their students to a great school. It would be a shame to shut down a school after we have worked so hard to keep it open, and how hard we are willing to work in the future to keep it going strong. Please make the decision to keep CMA open tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that concludes public forum.
Thank you. Moving forward with discussion, Ms. Babb.
I just have a question concerning Mr. McMillan's motion. When Ms. Hahn originally came to us, it was about changing the name of the school, and I'm just wondering, is that a whole separate vote? Because it doesn't seem like it's covered in the motion. So it's more a question of, I guess, does it need to be included in the motion, or is that a completely different motion? Maybe Mr. Dupler can answer that.
Or Mr. McMillan, I see you.
I purposely did not include it. Now, it doesn't prohibit, the first part of the motion, as Mr. Dupler read, allows them to go ahead on the path that they wanted to, but as far as the actual name change, I thought maybe that might be something that the board would choose to look at, maybe next month or something. That would be a separate item as far as the actual name change. But I think I'm correct, and I guess I'll ask the superintendent or Ms. Hahn, either one. I don't think, none of this was intended to prohibit them with establishing and changing the programs as they saw fit. Is that correct, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And in regard to the name change, I know there's policy that does lay out how that's to be done, so it doesn't prohibit CMA from moving forward to do what they wish to do and then bring it back to the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Dupler?
And I agree with what Mr. McMillan and Mr. Thomas are saying, but there is a board policy that would require, once the procedure is done, then the finalized proposed name would be brought back to the board. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I would like to say that I am in a situation, and I know I'm probably not the only board member up here, where my head and my heart are telling me two different things. In my heart, I know that everything everyone has said is genuine and sincere, and I don't think for 1 minute that CMA is not a wonderful school in a lot of ways, and certainly, without question, isn't doing great things. I mean, probably 100 emails, and then all of you showing up to support your school. I commend you and I applaud you, because this is the way it should be if this is your school, and this is the atmosphere and the attitude that that I love to see carried forward. My head is struggling greatly with this, as I said last week, because of the financial implications. I do struggle with the issue that every student will still receive a quality education. No student is going to be left uneducated. Will it look different? Yes, it will. But it is not a matter of denying any of our students the ability to be educated. Those of us that sat on the board last year through our budget cycle, you saw what a very, very painful process it was. We had cutting programs on the table. We had cutting teachers and positions on the table. It was just extremely, extremely difficult and challenging because nobody wants to cut anything, myself included. So I say all that to say that even though I believe probably the vote will be to continue CMA, and I cannot support that, it is not because of any of you or because I think CMA is a bad school, that I don't think it's not a great idea. I just feel compelled to look at the greater picture for all of Knox County and all fiscally, especially, and just feel like this is a painful, very painful decision that needs to be made. So, any other questions, comments? With that said, Ms. Coatney, if we could do roll call, and let's start with District 9.
Ms. Christie? Mr. McMillan?
Yes.
Ms. Bounds?
Yes.
Ms. Babb?
Yes.
Mr. Norman?
Yes.
Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes.
Ms. Horn?
Yes.
Ms. Hill?
No.
That's 8 yes votes and 1 no vote.
I am glad CMA will continue. All right, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for your participation in this process very much. Ms. Coatney, moving on.
Yes. Item 8B, approve fiscal year 2019 budget line item transfers in the amount of $238,140.
So moved.
Motion by Norman. Second by Horn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8C, approve fiscal year 2019 capital budget line item transfers in the amount of $518,000.
So moved.
By Norman, motion by Norman. Did you have a second by Owen? Discussion?
I just have a quick question, if I may, on the capital line item transfers. Are these funds surplus from construction projects that are just being moved over, or are they needed and being pulled over? Does that make sense?
Both.
Okay.
The lines that we're pulling from are the Pond Gap Elementary project that we're closing out, and then we had some funds left in the roofing line that we've need to pull, and we're pulling these funds into the BEP portable line so that we can move portables that will no longer be needed at NSCIP to other places in the county.
Thank you very much. I think you had told us that before, and I had forgotten. I was concerned about the roofing, but if it's overage, then that's great. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8D, approve fiscal year 2019 career and technical education budget line item transfer in the amount of $50,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Approve, motion by Norman, second by Owen. Discussion, Mr. Norman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, we tried to give the board a description, at least a sort of an outline description of what this position was, and so the main point today, my main point is just to continue with that.
Excuse me, Ms. I think you're addressing another.
Am I on D, 8D? I'm sorry.
We changed the order. We changed the order.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem at all.
It's all right.
So reverting back, is there any discussion on the line item transfer? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8E, approve request to add system-wide watershed facilitator position.
Okay, I'm ready now.
All right.
When you all switch the letters on me, I get lost.
All right, Mr. Norman,
Okay.
that's a motion.
Second.
Motion by Norman, second by Owen, and discussion. Mr. Norman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So last week we tried to get started with a description of this, so you ought to have somewhat of an understanding or picture about it. I think it's going to take a little bit more, and so that's what I'm trying to do. We've still got our folks from engineering here, Chris Granju, Roy Arthur, and Stephanie Carlson. Our science supervisor, Andrea Berry's here, and of course the superintendent, who I think would all speak an advocate of in support of the position if needed. The first thing that I'd like to do is, because the position seemed fairly limited in a way, I wanted to talk about it somewhat from a historical perspective. First of all, the $80K that's in the budget actually represents 3 positions. It's this facilitator position plus 2 internships, and these are people that would be supplied. The internships are the people who would be supplied to teachers who would affect students directly in the classroom. Roy Arthur and I were talking about the previous coordinator's tenure, and over the 15 years that she directed this, I think there was probably an average of 12 to 15 schools involved per year. And so there was at least one teacher in each one of those schools, sometimes multiple teachers, that were affected by this. His estimate, and I think he's pretty accurate, was somewhere around, in those 15 years, approximately 20,000 students. So this is not a limited thing at all. I could speak just to my experience as a teacher and as employing the principals of the program in my classroom. I know I personally affected at least 5,500 students. So I just used it every year. I used it in almost every class that I taught. And so it had a dramatic effect on me, and that's really the second part of this. I doubt that I would have stayed in education had it not been for this program. We have, as we just got out of this workshop, talked about our problem with retaining teachers. I think they said 50% are gone within 5 years. I'm pretty sure I would not have remained without this program. I think there's a whole lot of life science teachers within the county that probably are very similar to me. They love their topic. They love their subject. They love to really do all the things that we say is good about schools. Get out of the textbook, take them into the fields, do real science, hands-on, all this good stuff that we talk about. That's what goes on in the classes that are experiencing this type of program. So the point that, and we know teachers don't get into education because of money, so what do we do to retain them? I certainly thought that my longevity was due to the opportunities and experiences that I got sort of indirectly through the partnerships that we had. So let's see, I attended an international conference on watersheds in Quebec, Canada one year. I had 5 Oak Ridge National Lab internships in the biology division. I had 3 summers of TVA-sponsored teacher programs. So all these things were, and I'm just talking about myself, these things were invigorating, to say the least. They kept me excited about teaching. And so this is the main thing, I think, for me. It is the value that these programs offer in terms of opportunities and experiences to our teachers. And so I just wanted to emphasize that. You know, you can't imagine the value of having, of saying, okay, I want to do this, and then have 2 interns come in and say, yeah, I really I love what you're doing, and I'm here to help you. And you've got 25 kids that you know this cannot be done by yourself. So it's just one of those things that it just kept me going. So that's the main point. So I'll open it up to questions, and of course all the folks that we have here are available. So whatever you all think. Thank you.
Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment or two in reference to what Mr. Norman was saying. Not because of any expertise I have in science, but I did spend over 30 years in the classroom. And I think some things are sort of common experience. And I know from taking field trips, anytime the students can get away from the textbook and get out and truly learn things, those are things that stick with them, and they remember that years later. I know from 2 or 3 things that I did with some of my kids, particularly my government classes. I have occasionally run into people even today that will bring up something about, I run into them somewhere and they'll say, you remember when we went so-and-so? And they, you know, it's not that they don't learn stuff out of the book, but it's when you mention that class, you know, or that experience, well, it comes quickly to mind. And in this case, if I understand what's going on this day and time, I think it's very important to get kids started at an early age, and hopefully over a period of time that it will spread and be maybe contagious is too strong a word, but it will certainly have an imprint on others as we go through it. And I just think it's a worthy thing. It sounds like to me the funding is there already, and for the number of individuals that you're going to have involved for the amount of money, it looks to me like it's a bargain. So, thank you.
Ms. Babb?
I guess I do have, I mean, what's troubling me about it is not the position itself. I mean, I think that it has great merits, and Mr. Norman is talking with passion about how much this could benefit. But especially after the vote we just had and the discussion just had, I know there is $81,000, I guess, set aside for this year, but every year we seem to be having these budget issues, and it concerns me that we're looking at adding position, even though I know there's funding for this year set aside, but and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like next year it would be an addition to the budget that, once again, we are I don't think any of us see the light of day with more money coming in. So that is just my big concern, is not the value of this position at all, but just even if it was passed today, it seems like it would be probably first on the chopping block for next year.
Ms. Horn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my thoughts are very similar. It definitely sounds like it would be beneficial. I guess my question is, and I don't know, would the current science staff be able to incorporate this, the science supervisors be able to incorporate this into what they're already doing? Because they would already have curriculum for the life science classes. Could that be incorporated into what they're already doing? I guess would be my biggest question on it, if anybody would like to address that.
Mr. Thomas, do you have any?
Madam Chair, yes, I'll be glad to ask Dr. Riswick or Ms. Berry to respond, since they work on a day-to-day basis with this. But it was the funding has been there, like we've talked about, for 2 years to get this started, and it was set aside for that purpose. Like I said, it would be the other day, I think, or last week, talked about it being a pilot program, put some measurements in place for it to evaluate the effectiveness of it. And you're right, it would, if it's a recurring expense, it would have to be in the budget. But I think, from what I understand, most of what's there is already will be next year. It will start up, I think, position-wise for the next school year. So it would be the following year that it would, if we were to continue, if it's approved, and if we continue, then the budget impact would be the following year.
Thank you. One other question I would have, when we're looking at the science, when we're looking at that department, is there any possibility that there are any other positions that maybe would be going away that could make room for another position?
Of course, the Friday is the deadline on the retirement incentive, and then once Friday gets here, I think folks have another week to make a decision to rescind. So what we plan to do is really to look at all positions and make some assessments about those positions and the need for, and anything that we can absorb, then that's what we're looking at doing. So
okay.
I don't know if that answers.
Okay. And is this something that we need to decide right now? I guess would be my next question.
Well, I think for us, from a curriculum standpoint, and also get the measurements and things in place. Of course, we're going to be running up against next year real quick, I think, with almost February being here next time we meet. So I think in order for things to get started, I believe it would be necessary or important, I guess, for the board to consider this this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mounds?
Thank you. Tony, you were very convincing. I hear your passion. It does concern me because of the time I've been on this board. It's very easy to add something, but it's very hard to ever remove it. And it's not been my experience, except with the AVID program, maybe, that we've, it's just not easy to take something away once it's been given and once it's a part of your curriculum, your programming, whatever. It's just really hard. And it doesn't always matter what the data shows. We saw that last spring, So that's just my reluctance in adding a position, because I don't want to, down the road, have to riff another teacher by adding this position. I mean, that is a position. It is a position that could pay for another teacher or another social worker or whatever, or for somebody to keep their job. So I don't know, I'm really struggling with this one. I love the value of it, but it's like I said, it's not easy to ever take away, so.
Ms. Christie?
Yeah, my concern's with the reoccurring costs, but I'm curious, does it have to be a full-time position? I mean, could we do it like pay somebody like on a part-time or as needed, or to come in to these classrooms without making it I mean, it seems like that would stretch that $81,000 a lot farther if it wasn't someone that was there every day.
Mr. Thomas?
I think from looking at the job description there, I believe that there could be some other duties assigned as well as this. So I know again, maybe it'd be better for Dr. Riswick or Ms. Berry to answer that, but I think just looking at the job description with the other duties as assigned, I think if it's a situation where a person could do more, I think we could always use more hands. I know we've tried to look at system-wide positions and absorb as many as those as we could, but I do think it's a need for it to be full-time, but again, I'll defer to Dr. Riswick and Ms. Berry to further address that.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I would just say, talking again to some of Ms. Horns as well, our science department, when we look at how we support, and we talked about the micro team concept and how we try to support schools around that. Two of our core departments aren't fully staffed at 8 to do that, and science is one of those. So our math and our reading, ELA, we have 8 folks on board so that they can serve each of those groups of schools. Science currently has 5 people, so they don't have the full 8 folks. So they're stretched pretty thin in what their load is right now. Kind of again trying to keep up with the other departments that have 8 people supporting the schools. As far as the capacity of that full job and what that Ms. Berry may have more to add to that, but I think it's harder to tell because the position doesn't exist, so we don't. It's not like we've had it and we can say, well, we could do it with 1.5 people or 2 people. So I think the description as it's laid out right now, we agree. Mr. Thomas has mentioned that I think our science team is pretty much at capacity right now to be able to add additional things to their plate.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I share the same concerns that have been addressed by several other board members. It is not the value of the position, because certainly we've got many areas across the system that could benefit from specialty positions such as this one. I keep hearing the word absorbed as we refer back to our retirement and the effort being made to try to actually absorb to be able to reduce some positions, and I just think there's probably never a good time, but this is really not a good time to be adding to positions, no matter how justified and beneficial they may be. All right. Having said that, we'll take it to a vote. I believe we probably need to do roll call again, starting with District 1.
Yes.
Ms. Satterfield.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. And I'm voting. You did got me. I'm voting on what's on the agenda, correct?
Yes.
That's the motion on the floor. Yes.
To be clear, you're voting to approve the addition.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Owen. Yes. Mr. Norman.
Yes.
Ms. Babb.
No.
Ms. Bounds.
No.
Mr. McMillan.
Yes.
Ms. Christie.
No.
Ms. Horn.
No.
Ms. Hill.
No.
That is 5 no votes and 4 yes votes.
All right. That concludes our regular agenda. Public forum, Ms. Horn? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize. Yeah.
Item 8F, discussion and action regarding 2019 Knox County Board of Education legislative priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Norman, I'm suffering from you looking at different numbers here. And we do have a speaker.
We do, Madam Chair. I'd like to call on Caitlin Newell. Please state your name and county residence.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Nowell. I am a resident in District 2 and I teach in District 9. I am a 7th grade English Language Arts teacher at South Doyle Middle School. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with y'all tonight, and I also want to thank you for the important work that you do to change the lives of our students. And I'm here tonight to talk about change. To illustrate my point, I would love to tell you a story about Tony. Tony was in my class last year, and he was a struggling student. He has an individual education plan, otherwise known as an IEP. He struggled with a reading deficit and a writing deficit, and historically experienced a very low level of success in school in general, and really just felt like a failure and communicated that to me often, and it hurt my heart for him. Over the course of last year, through a lot of hard work, he grew from the 3rd percentile from his previous TN Ready test to the 18th percentile, which is not fully where he needs to be in order to be on track, but that is tremendous growth, and we celebrated wholeheartedly. And what was the catalyst for this change? It was high expectations in the form of rigorous standards and an aligned assessment that accurately measured that growth. Tony and dozens more of my personal students are prime reasons why I ask you tonight that you stay the course with the TN Ready assessment. After years of trial and error, field tests, multiple sets of standards in each subject, changing the test at this juncture would be a massive disruption to teachers and students. Our Tennessee standards were curated specifically with Tennessee students in mind. They were created by Tennessee teachers for Tennessee students. The TN Ready was then crafted again with heavy input from educators across the state to cater specifically to our Tennessee state standards that we teach every day. The TN Ready provides the stability and the alignment that the ACT Aspire Suite does not. Because the ACT Aspire Suite is not fully aligned to our Tennessee standards, we run the risk of teachers throwing out the rigorous academic standards that they teach every day and returning to those old methods of teaching to the test and drill and kill. The TN Ready has provided me as an educator with invaluable student-specific data that allows me to identify the individual needs in my students' learning. Because it is directly aligned, the student reports go into great detail. If you've ever had a chance to look at them, they tell by standard how the student performed. They tell by category. They have comparisons, how the student did compared to his school, to his district, to the state. They have strengths and weaknesses, and then what can the teacher or the parents do to help that student improve? As a state and as a county, we have worked so hard to become the fastest improving state in the nation. And I'm so proud to say that I work in the fastest improving state. And our standards and our assessment are critical steps that we took in order to lead us to this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes public forum on this issue.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Horn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I have a couple of questions. One would be on the teacher performance evaluation. The fact that, I guess my question is, is Tiger still too limited? Does Tiger address this issue? If we were to move all our schools to Tiger, would this still be an issue for us?
Mr. Thomas?
Well, as we've heard, there's been much success with the Tiger model. I've heard a lot less, I guess, from the standpoint of people objecting to, well, people don't object to evaluation, they object to the method of evaluation, I guess. And Tiger, in my mind, addresses this because it's a year-long process. It's not a score after one observation, so it does take into effect that the whole year-long teaching process. So again, board members may feel differently about that, but I think we've experienced great satisfaction from our teachers and our administrators with the Tiger model. So I see that addressing this, but again, board members may have different opinions about that.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent. I definitely am in favor of us moving everybody to Tiger, and of course, that's a different topic for a different day, but it seems like that was my thought, that may be addressed with Tiger. Of course, we have two different versions of this. The one that has the bullet points for the funding issue, I like that portion of it that kind of puts all of those funding requests together. So kind of maybe to try to marry these two documents, that may be something. I like the bullet points of the first one, and I like the funding part of the second one, so that would be my opinion on that. One other, and regarding the ACT, this was definitely something that we heard, and I know Ms. Owen will have some information to add. This is definitely something that we heard at TSBA that other districts were in favor of. I guess I am not comfortable that I know enough about it to really go there right now. And like I said last week, I really think that it may be better if we focus our priorities when we approve this, so that we are truly focusing on the biggest issues that we have, the largest issues that we have in the funding and vouchers. So I would like to see us be a little more targeted in that way and do a little more research on the ACT issue. I don't think our legislature is going to do anything with that right now. So I think that we probably need to do a little more research on that for my comfort level before we include that. So I would love to hear from other people.
All right. Just for a point of clarification here before we go further, you have two drafts in front of you. One of them in the red has draft at the top. The second copy says, it does not, Knox County Board of Education legislative priorities.
It's stapled.
It's stapled, thank you. Thank you. So for a point of clarification, Ms. Horn, with what when you were talking about bullet points, please clarify. Okay. On the draft that
yes.
May I just suggest, if there's no objection, that we look at the draft, the red one, and let's assume this is our base.
Okay.
Is everyone in agreement with that? I don't know if I need to make that in the form of a motion or not, but I see a lot of heads nodding. All right, so for the purposes of discussion, the one with the red draft will be the document that we will start discussing and adding to or taking from, using this other draft that Ms. Owen suggested for consideration to combined. Are we all clear on that?
Do I need to restate what I said, or does that make what I say make sense? Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Ms. Owen?
Yes, two things to address. First, the ACT suite of assessments. This is the language directly from TSBA that we also approved there. And this does not require that we use the ACT suite. This only calls on the Department of Education to allow districts to use the ACT suite. So it's there so that it could be available so that we could make that choice, but they would have to agree first before we could even decide whether to use it. Under teacher performance evaluation, this is also, I believe, language from TSBA. It is very similar to it's almost exactly what we had previously, with the exception that team is specifically removed and just says summative scores should only be used in an advisory capacity. I think it's important for us to continue looking at the evaluation overall, because there are pieces that some teachers have that other teachers do not. So using multiple measures, I think we want to continue to talk with our legislature about, and also making sure that we have input from actual educators in Tennessee that we can identify, not just that they say we had input, but that we know that we actually did. The funding for teacher salaries, I believe that is also the same as it was in our other version last year previously. I would like to move that up under funding so that could be together. I think that's all.
All right, Ms. Babb?
Yeah, I would like to speak to the ACT suite assessment. I'm a little like Ms. Horn. I don't feel like I personally know enough about it, but what troubles me is there was a move to go to a national test, PARC, and that caused all sorts of controversy. And so we, and Common Core and PARC, and what we as a state decided was we needed our own standards developed here in Tennessee, and then a test was developed to align to that. And, you know, I think from what I have been told, there's been a lot of teacher input about that test. And so it concerns me that we are, even though we're not saying we necessarily want that test here, we're now trying to get a national test to be our, at least an option that is not necessarily aligned to our standards. And I think the ACT test that all of our juniors and seniors take, it's a very different measurement. And I think that's sometimes where I think, and maybe I don't have enough knowledge, but the ACT that I know that they take for college entry is trying to test a very different type of learning than what is learned on a yearly basis by students. It's a culmination of a lifetime of learning when they take the ACT. And so I think when we talk about so much emphasis on ACT, and so therefore why don't we go to the ACT suite of assessments, it seems like it's kind of going against what came up a few years ago about wanting a Tennessee standards and tests aligned to those standards.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, in an effort to try to come to a document we can all accept, I've heard three things mentioned. Again, I'm looking at the draft, the red draft copy. I heard the first comments on teacher performance evaluation. It is in the red draft in the form of a bullet point and a sentence. It is also in the other document, which is a little more lengthy. Actually, it's about which is a more lengthy statement. In essence, as Ms. Owen said, it's straight out of TSBA. I'm not sure that one maybe is any better than the other, except that the draft one is just briefer and more concise. May I have a, is there a motion that the Owen draft, for lack of a better descriptor, be used in lieu of the current sentence on the red draft? Ms. Bounds?
I think, looking at this, I'm more in favor whether we leave the ACT suite of assessments in or remove it. I really like the format of the Owen draft better, and I think the final sentence, I don't see it in the red draft. The summative score should only be used in an advisory capacity and not as a major determinant factor in forming personnel decisions. I think that's a very key point that TSBA has included in under their teacher performance evaluation. And if I'm looking at it correctly, that is not included in the red draft.
All right.
So I think there are some specifics in the Owen draft that would be valuable to keep in there. And really, it's still just a one-page document. We may have smaller font, but it's still one page. And I really like the funding portion a lot better. It's a lot more readable and user-friendly, and I think it highlights the areas. The red draft is very hard for me to read, and on Owens, you've got exactly what funding we're referring to. So that would be my thoughts on that. But the main thing was that the summative score should only be used in an advisory capacity and not as a major determinant in personnel decisions. So.
Thank you for that. That's really a valid point. All right then. Initially, I had suggested talking about the red draft as our working document. I'm hearing Ms. Bounds suggesting we use the Owen draft as the working document. So what is the board's pleasure? We just need to land on one or the other here, and then look at revisions. So, Ms. Horn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it basically, for the most part, is the same except the formatting on the funding. So I'm fine with using Ms. Owens. I think that we need to just talk about the last item then.
All right. So, Ms. Bounds.
I see. Well, is Representative Kane still here? Maybe not.
Just left.
Oh, that's sad, because in sitting through some of the educational committees at the state that they held, there is a lot of support among our state legislators for the ACT suite of assessments. I mean, I don't know how much that impacts what we do as a board. I do, I'm like you all, I could know more, but I don't think this limits us. And there is support down there in Nashville to move to an ACT test.
All right.
So because of all the problems we've had with testing in Tennessee, and originally we borrowed some of those standards. If you all that were not on the board remember, Ms. Owen could probably speak to that better than I am, but we actually bought some of those standards and testing from other states, and to say they were Tennessee developed was not an accurate statement. Now, we have had a lot of teacher input since then, but let no one kid themselves. These were things that were purchased for the use of Tennessee.
All right. Again, before we go any further, board, please tell me.
Owens.
Are we going to use the Owen draft and work from that, or do you prefer to use the red draft and work from that? Do I need to make this in the form of a motion?
Can I move to use the Owen draft as our formulation to move forward?
Thank you. All right. Motion by Babb, second by Bounds. Now, do we have any discussion on that? I see lights. No, but no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Everyone put the Owen draft on the top. All right, now, in an effort still to try to be concise on this, instead of jumping from one to another, I have heard discussion on the teacher performance bullet, and Ms. Bounds rightly pointed out that the longer statement includes the not the accountability piece. So unless there is specific objection about that, we will move forward keeping that as is. I see lights. Has anybody got comment on that one? Ms. Christie? Okay, I see your light. All right. So we're good on that. All right. The next point I heard brought up was on the let's see, the teacher salary funding, and I believe I heard again that the draft, the Owen draft, having the funding for teacher salary where it is placed, I'm believing sounded like a better placement. I'm seeing nods. All righty. The third thing that I heard brought up, which seems to be, I think, where we are now, is the ACT part. Thank you. So we are in agreement, I am hearing, all the way down to the last bullet. All right, that's huge progress. Now, all right, so we will talk about the ACT bullet, and Ms. Babb, I believe.
I went off and on.
All right, I apologize. I believe it'd be Christie, Babb, and Satterfield. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know enough about the ACT suite. I mean, if you do a quick Google search, you'll see that a couple of states use it, and it has not went well at all for them. And I feel like including that language in here is almost like we as a board are endorsing that in some way. So I don't know enough about it to actually say the ACT suite.
All right, thank you. Ms. Babb?
Yeah, I was actually going to call on Mr. Thomas or someone with your staff to maybe speak to it, since I think a lot of us feel very kind of troubled about not knowing enough about the ACT suite, and going to see if I could get your opinion about it.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Roswick, if you would address that for us.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Babb. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I think there's been some good questions and good thoughts raised today. I think as a staff, when we look at that thing, there would be, in order to make that switch, there would be some questions that we would have too, and we're not in control of answering those. I think a good point was made about the current purpose of both of those tests. ACT is more of, and has been in the business and built the reputation on being a college entrance exam and kind of a assessment of the overall culminating what a students learn throughout their time. TN Ready, as we've talked before, is really more kind of a year-to-year basis of what you get from that. There could be some concern, especially for at-risk students, when you get into like the high school suite. If you from Algebra 1 to Geometry to Algebra 2, I haven't seen specific tests for those in the ACT suite, so you might instead get a math grade where there is some value in knowing where a student's deficient on an annual basis, especially in at-risk populations. We talked about alignment to the standards. And here's an example of some of those places where there's some differences. The ACT is crosswalk to the Tennessee state standards, but there are some places, for instance, writing is not addressed in the ACT standards. So if that was kind of where we went to adopt those, you always want your standards to align to your assessment. Or even science labs, like they're not required to meet ACT standards, which they're written into Tennessee state standards, which, again, questions that we would just have to how we would go about doing that. I think I made another note here. Oh, yeah. So I think there's still some questions about capacity. Not that we want to remember that, but I think we had that happen with Bearden High School not too long ago with ACT's ability to pull that out. Even with our pilot with Aspire, it was delayed a year for some technical problems that we couldn't get worked out with that. So I'm not at all saying ACT is not highly qualified to carry out testing. I'm just saying vendors are vendors. And so I would just want some assurance, or want us to know something to consider too, that they have the ability to pull that off, because we've even had some issues with that on a national test at that point. And then I think we have been approached, several of our principals have, by SAT, which currently SAT and ACT are both tests that can be taken to meet the graduation requirement. And SAT is something that's aligned to, if you take the pre-SAT, which is one of their earlier tests, that gives what's the word I'm looking, AP potential for how they might do in AP courses and that sort of thing. So we had a few of our high schools come and talk to us about even thinking about going to the SAT. So again, I think both companies are great companies when it comes to that. And we have had issues with TN Ready, and I think that's made some of this, but I think they do some different things in their current form. It's not to say ACT wouldn't improve their suite or work on that, but to date, we haven't seen that product.
You good? All right. Ms. Satterfield?
Yes. To Board Member Bound's comments that she made regarding the standards, I had the privilege of using the crosswalk of the standards and with the ACT, and there's not that big of a difference between the standards. And so I don't know if that'll be a huge issue within our schools. But I'm in support of keeping it here. Mostly because when you think about the ACT, now I know it's a big picture and how it's going to, if it is adopted, how it will transpire into our school setting, but it's actually it's a test that kids care about. And so you actually have the motivation of kids to actually apply themselves and do what is necessary because it aligns to their future of college. I do think that it needs to be a narrative to change that if it is adapted from the Board of Education, from the Tennessee Department of Education. So I support it. But I also think it's important for us to keep it on the draft simply because it's just stating that it allows districts to choose. Now, how we know government works and how slow things can be, it might be in our best interest to open the door now, like push forward now, because if we continue to see the results that we see with TN Ready, if it continues to grow, improve or doesn't improve, 3 or 4 years from now, it's already on the Tennessee Department of Education that allows us to adopt the ACT if we choose to. So I think it's just us being proactive versus reactive.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Horn? I guess it says EOC testing, so that implies high school. Is that so? Would it just be high school we're essentially talking about? TN Ready would be for K or for 3rd through 8th? Ms. Owen, do you know? I don't know. Okay, because do you know, Ms. Satterfield?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Okay, because that's what, I guess in my mind, I'm thinking about, you would have TN Ready through 8th grade, and then you would have ACT as an option, ACT Suite as an option for high school. So, do you have any insight on that, Dr. Reiswick?
Thank you, Ms. Horn. I know under ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, the requirement even with this, because this is something that's allowable, and I think 3 states in the United States have chosen to do that. North Dakota, Arizona, and Oklahoma are the 3 states that currently use the ACT at their high school level. Like states like Utah use the ACT, but then also they actually have Questar for their 3-8 testing, but so there's still a component for that. ESSA requires math and English to be assessed every year. So again, I know ACT has worked on some new suites of some things, and I don't know what products are there, but I mean, I know the state would have to submit, in essence, to on those 3 to 8 grades to get some version of understanding that they could use that suite, because I haven't seen the product yet, 3.8, and that, I mean, I may be ignorant to it, that does that. But I do know ESSA does require math and ELA or reading to be tested every year in those grades.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Satterfield?
Yes, and I also just want to add, when it comes to the ELC testing, so the ACT is already happening in our classrooms and for the juniors and the seniors, and it's provided from the state as well. And so when we think about efficiency in the classroom and in the school system to make sure that we're getting the most academic instruction happening, this test has already happened. So how can we streamline our testing process? Because when it comes to the ELC, there's chunks of time throughout the school year where students are taking this test because of the test, on top of also taking the ACT. So to me, it just means that this is just an opportunity for us to streamline and make it efficient, and making sure that educators do have the opportunity to teach as much as they can in the classroom and not taking out those chunks of classroom instruction time to do the ELC testing.
Any other questions, comments? Dr. Reiswick, if I may, I heard you say that some of our schools are actually considering the SAT instead of the ACT. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. That is a little bit troubling to me, to put a specific ACT in a legislative priority if in fact other schools might want to use the SAT. I'm just stating this is pretty specific in that wording, and in lieu of EOCs. In Knox County, tell me what we give EOCs for. I mean, what subjects?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would probably list them off. I'd probably leave one off, but basically it's the core academic in the high schools, the core academic courses. The state covers most of those. They have retracted back the English 3 and chemistry, right?
Okay.
English 3 and chemistry, but other than that, most of the courses you would think of in the 4 core academic areas, they've given those. In areas where we don't, where we have like foreign language or some of our CTE courses, things like that, we have created some local EOCs that we do and kind of scan internally and send those out. And then in courses that we have that have few students, so everyone's giving one, that the teacher may generate their own for that one.
Mm-hmm. Did I hear you say, though, that as of now, though, that the ACT suite would not address, I mean, it would satisfy ESSA, but it would not address what we in fact do now.
Right. I think, and again, I'm not a total expert on the ACT suite. I know last time we met with their person, they're under development of some things and even talking about into the elementary grades. But you know, we had not seen that product, and so again, they could have been working on that. What I think you potentially could lose with that, in the 3 states that have chosen to do that, you know, they get a overall grade, overall score their junior year on like an ACT, which tells them their college preparedness in those subject areas. What you would lose, again, and to, you know, my concern would be like for at-risk students. When you go through year to year, you're not necessarily going to get how they performed in Algebra 1 versus Geometry versus Algebra 2. You're going to get an overall math score their junior year. You know, again, could we do something locally to be able to look at those things? Yes, but as far as having a comparison across the state and seeing how our district's doing versus other districts and those kinds of things, then you would not have that in the ACT.
We would lose a growth measure.
And again, and Mr. Dupler's the attorney, but I think the way some of the current legislation is written, there would have to be some changes in the law as far as to your point about measurements of those kinds of things too. So, you know, again, I'm just trying to look at where we are in our current reality, and we just have questions about things that we would need to change, and obviously the state would have to address those.
I do hear you, and I certainly respect that, and I have heard from several teachers that kind of echo what our speaker tonight said, that for all the growing pains we've had with 10 Ready, and whether that's where we end up or not, is really not relevant to this particular document. The fact that it would require some realignment with our teachers who have already been through a lot of change with standards and alignment, and I would be very reluctant to open that door just yet, given my personal lack of information, I guess, on really what ACT or SAT or anyone else could offer at this point. Ms. Bounds?
Okay. Well, I agree with Ms. Satterfield. I think we may be overthinking this, and I would just like to make, is it possible for me to just make a substitute motion and that we keep the Owen draft and remove the ACT portion? I mean, there's going to be another year. This is just a guideline for our legislature. I feel like we're just way overthinking this at this time, and there's opportunities in the future to go back and put that in or take it out, but I think it's more imperative that we get it to the state on time. So if, I don't know whether Mr. Duper, I'm not real good at this, if that's a substitute motion that we adopt the Owen draft and remove the last portion of the ACT.
If I may.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Bounds. At this time, it would be a new motion because you've already had a motion just to approve this draft as your working form. So that would be a new motion.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the Owen draft and send it to the state minus the use of ACT suite of assessments, so we can all come to some kind of agreement tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Bounds. Is there a second? Second by Owen. Any further discussion on that? Ms. Owen?
I was just going to say that I believe I can take that out of the bottom and make the font larger so that it will be a little easier to read, and it will still all fit on one page.
Appreciate that. Any other discussion? Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
McMillan opposes? Motion carries. Thank you. Board members, this will be cleaned up in the morning and will be immediately distributed to our legislative body, who I think you might know are home right now gathering information and materials. And so this is really a great time to say, all right, this is what we've got, and please look at this, and we'll move forward from that point. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was under the impression that that when you said we would move this Owen thing up and talk about as our working thing and talk about those items, I was under the impression that we're just moving it up to talk about it. I wasn't. I guess what I'm getting at is, do we not need an official vote to approve all the things down through there? You didn't. It wasn't real clear, at least to me, that with what you said, the way you said it, we were just moving the Owen thing up for our working copy, and you were going to discuss these things and make some adjustments.
All right. I appreciate your comments, Mr. McMillan. I believe, Ms. Coatney, if you would read Ms. Bounds' motion that was stated.
Ms. Bounds' motion was to adopt the Owen draft and send to the state minus the ACT language at the bottom.
Well, yeah, on that, but was that the original, or was that the one that she just made just a minute ago?
The initial motion that was made was to use the Owen draft as our working document.
Okay.
As opposed to the other draft we had in front of us. That was the initial motion.
Okay, so this last vote was the official vote on the thing in its entirety.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. Dupler? All right.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. Okay, any other comments, questions, anything anyone wants to say before we adjourn? Thank you. We do,
Madam Chair, have one person for public forum.
I apologize. I thought we'd covered that.
Heather Wilder, please state your name and county of residence.
My name is Heather Wilder, and I'm in Knox County. And I want to talk to you about my son, Marcel. Marcel is an honor student in the IB program at West. He has over a 4.0 GPA, and he made a 34 on the ACT, first time out, no studying, no tutoring. He's been an active leader at his school. Over the last 4 years, he's introduced some of our board members at our National Achievers Society induction. This is a partial packet of his acceptance letters to colleges and honors colleges. However, my son wants to currently quit school. This is because for over a year now, my son has been targeted and harassed by the principal at his school, Ashley Jesse. And I have gone before every person, committee, adult that I'm supposed to, and nothing has been done for my son. In fact, it's only gotten worse. There were some issues, and I apologize. Marcel is autistic. He is high functioning. He spent the first up to 9th grade into private schools and transferred into West halfway through his 9th grade year. And before that, I did not have these problems. When this principal took over, Marcel got his 504 during her first year. At that end of that first year, there was an issue with one teacher not following a 504. Nothing was done. The next year, several problems crept up. By November of 2018, nothing was still being done, so I set an appointment and met with Superintendent Thomas and Dr. Davis about this. And I told them this time last year that if this principal was not stopped, she would get worse and the targeting of my son would get worse.
All right.
I am asking for help because my son has been put out of his classrooms. He has been bullied. He was removed as starter on the football team by this principal. I have gotten no help from anyone involved. No one has done anything for Marcel's benefit. Currently, he has not been to school since winter break started because he was ill. But I received an email yesterday from the principal saying that if he didn't go back to one of his classes, to the weightlifting class, that they had to pull him out of because the coach had created a culture of humiliation, harassment, and abuse of Marcel that the school did nothing about because the 3 individuals who investigated it were the AD, Chris Carruthers, the principal, Ashley Jesse.
Ma'am, you need to stop using personal names.
Okay,
If you'd
the
like
principal, the AD, and the assistant, or the head football coach, all were the people involved in investigating what they had done. Now, something about that seems wrong to me. You can't have the foxes investigating the foxes about what's going on in the hen house. It's just that simple. So Marcel's 504 has been violated. Currently, his FAPE is being violated, and no one cares. 4 months till graduation. 4 months, and we have nothing in place. 4 months, and I don't know how my child is going to get to May because of this problem. I don't know who I'm supposed to go to. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next Tuesday when he goes back to school. And I am asking this board because apparently the superintendent's office has no authority. Apparently no one over the principal has any authority or will do anything. I'm asking for an official investigation and for you all to meet with my son over these matters because, as I've already been told by attorneys who I've spoken to, he has a lawsuit against Knox County for what has been done to him. I'm just trying to get him graduated into one of these colleges. That is my goal. That has been my goal since the child was diagnosed when he was 2.5 years old. And I don't know what to do. So you are my last resort. And I'm asking for your help.
Thank you. Okay, we don't respond during public forum, so.
I understand.
But I appreciate your comments. Madam Chair, that concludes public forum.
Thank you, and just for clarification, Mr. Dupler, if you wouldn't mind addressing the board as far as our position when lawsuits have been filed, when there's legal action pending, what your instruction to the board is?
Well, I didn't hear whether or not a lawsuit had been filed. I guess I'd heard that a lawsuit had been discussed, but I mean, if a lawsuit has been filed, then that's not something that the board would discuss publicly.
Thank you.
I have not filed yet.
All right, thank you.
I have a year after he graduates to file.
All right, thank you. Thank you for coming. All right.
Move to approve? I mean to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Ms. Horn. Second, Mr. McMillan. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are adjourned.